So Downfall of Pompeii is what we've decided to play today. Yeah, so this one's really fun. It's it's a tile layer like you're used to with Carcassonne, but it's also a... Well, how would you describe the first part of the game?
I would not describe this in any way similar to Carcassonne. What
do you mean?
It's got
square tiles.
It's square tiles. Come on,
It's a
Carcassonne.
game about tragedy.
Yeah, like Carcassonne.
Yeah.
It's a game where you
you've got
burn your own pieces.
There are square tiles, and I think that's about as far as the similarities to Carcassonne
And
go.
meeples.
Wait a minute. I mean,
Sort of.
what other similarities do you need? Anyway, so how would you describe the first part of the game? It's...
Worker placement.
Would you call it?
No.
Just marker placement.
Essentially,
you can't explain the first part of the game without explaining the last part of the game.
All right, well,
This
this is Pompeii. So essentially, what's happening is we have a map of the village or the town or whatever Pompeii happened to be.
Town.
And off in one corner is this plastic piece that's a volcano, and
sitting there minding its own business.
Yeah, and I pimp mine out with a little tea light that makes it look like it's on the verge of erupting, because
if you turn all the lights out,
it's a little the batteries are dying. But next time we play, I'll have a new tea light. But it's Pompeii. Eventually, this volcano is going to get angry and it's going to swallow everybody. So in the first part of the game, you're playing out cards to put people on the board so that they can get eaten by the volcano. Because what happens is when a volcano tile goes down, and I don't want to say kills, but preserves.
Immolates.
Seriously, you're putting a spin on a volcano.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, sure. It preserves the people on that space.
You're actually taking the little meeples off the board and chucking them into the volcano, which I think is what makes this game so perfect.
It's pretty great.
It's a metaphor for happiness. Is that it, Stephen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like when you're playing Carcassonne and it's just so chill. You're putting your farmers out and you're, chilling on roads and not getting robbed by anybody. And it's the same feeling of just chillness when you are tossing your opponent's pieces into the volcano.
This is going to be a rough game for me.
It may. I just, trigger warning for anybody who's had family die in a volcano. That's what this game is about. I mean, we're going to put people out, and then in phase 2, we're going to burn them all up with hot lava and pyroclastic flows. So, you take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I really enjoy this game because of the two different phases. I really like that you have the first phase where you're building up the city and populating Pompeii and ideally kind of keeping an eye out for which district you're putting people into and who your neighbors are and where your color is amassed. Because in the second stage, you pull tiles out of a bag, and each tile has to go adjacent to a tile in its district, I think.
There's 6 different districts.
Yeah, like there's the mask district. And so the first mask tile you draw, you put down a magma tile on
the mask.
On the mask. And then the next time somebody pulls a mask, they can put down magma adjacent to that spot.
Yep.
And then you also take turns having your people flee from the magma trying to reach one of the exits in the city. And what I always think is interesting, and where there's the prime opportunity for, call it player interaction, is there's only, there's a good amount of exits from the city, but there's a limited number. And so they can get cut off, right?
You can totally block an exit.
Oh, yeah. So if I've got all my people on the west side of the city, I don't want the magma anywhere near where I am. So on my turn, I'm going to do my best to have it go to the east. And if I happen to cut off the gate that, all of John's pieces are desperately trying to reach, then, oh well.
Oops. I'm sorry. We're aiming at Cody this game.
Oh, sorry.
Steve
we're Cody's pieces.
We don't all have to aim at me.
We all remember the game of Mosaic where he absolutely brutalized us.
No, I'm talking about the game of Survive where he sea monstered the hell out of that boat I was on.
That's true. This
that
is
was
sort
me
of
screwing over Chris.
This is sort of a brother game of
I think
Survive.
Cody's trying to gaslight you.
I would never.
But
He can punch me.
I really like that dynamic where you're trying to get your people out and you have to respond to how the lava's coming out and flowing across the town because you don't get to move them all at once. You have to decide do I like get the people on the edges out first
Right.
and then they're safe, or do I try and vacate the middle?
Yep.
I do really like the movement mechanic, which I believe is you can move further the more people were in your starting space.
Yes.
Thematically, it's a herd mentality.
Yeah, so if there's like 5 people in that space, you can move 5 spaces, which means
You can move one guy 5 spaces.
Yeah,
But
you move
then
one guy
the
farther.
next people to leave.
But then they can't go as far, and so you got to decide
That's right. So
you're
you want to
kind of-
move to a space that has people in it already because that will help you move again the next
but
turn.
by nature of the game, you're leaving people behind.
Yeah, you have to pick your winners and losers.
Yeah.
And the board itself is kind of set up to try and make it easier to congregate in the middle.
Yeah, there are a lot of spaces for people in the middle, and not as many next to the gates. So you might have a guy next to the gate, but he can, at least at the beginning, there'll only be one guy in that space, so he's only going to move one. So you're really, if you go for the ones that are closest to the gate, chances are it's going to take you 2 turns to get them out.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta there's times where you go, okay, well I've got like a guy there. He's one space away from the gate, and he's also right next to the lava. So is he safe? Like, can I trust John not to just dunk this guy in lava? Or do I need to get him out the gate now? But if I get him out the gate now, I'm definitely sacrificing the people in the middle who really need multiple turns to get out. And it's an interesting...
Picking who lives and who dies
it's an
is kind of
design.
interesting.
Yep.
I enjoy the...
And you might think to yourself, well, why even put people down if you're just going to end up killing everybody?
Well, that's how you win.
And the answer is you get points for however many people you evacuate.
I
Much like
think-
Survive.
I think in true...
You get a point for everyone that gets out.
I think
Right.
in true
And to get people
Roman
out,
fashion,
you got to throw as many in as possible.
And you don't get to just
Yeah.
place people anywhere you want. You have to play. So you get this deck of cards that says, hey, you can play people to this section. You can play people to that section. So at that point, you kind of pick in, well, I'd rather be closer to the door, but at the same time, I don't get as many points for being closer to the door, so I want to be up higher, that kind of thing. So
What's also dictated by the cards that you have. So, for instance, I have this 11 card that's brown. So I can only put people into that
Section
particular building.
wow. And like the place where the lava erupts in that part of town is right next to the
right
gate.
in the middle of it.
Right,
Yeah,
right
you'll
where you would
also-
expect to
You'll
leave.
notice that one building actually covers, 5 tiles?
Yeah.
And so the people are pretty spread out
Mm-hmm.
compared to some of the other colors where, there's the 4, where there's 4 people in one spot, and
Mm-hmm.
it's varied. It's an interesting game because you got to think about that, and then there's plenty of opportunities to screw people over in the placement part as well.
Yeah. So, there aren't many in-your-face take-that games that I'm truly into. Like, I like Survive, and there are other handful that I enjoy, but I think this is one of my favorite of this particular genre. And a lot of that is the interplay between there's a take that in the first phase and there's a take that in the second phase. And, as I mentioned, like when you're playing Carcassonne and you're just chilling out and being zen with your farmers, pitching people into the volcano is one of the most cathartic experiences that you can have in gaming.
How relaxing Steven finds this is starting to concern me.
It is a little concerning.
We don't live near a volcano, right?
No.
He works
Okay.
in the medical experiment industry. I'll just mention
Ooh,
that.
that's...
Well, unless you count Yellowstone.
I mean, that's pretty far from here, relatively.
On the other
It's
hand,
a really big
relatively,
volcano,
it's
Depends
though.
on
not
how
that far.
committed Steven is.
And we are downwind.
Yeah, we aren't in the Ring of Fire, unfortunately. No, I'm just kidding.
But I think it's important. It's not a light game per se, but it's not a heavy
it's not
game.
a long game.
Yeah, this
think
is
it's
like
the
what,
key.
maybe half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah, about 45 minutes, I would say.
Yeah.
And
Be in your face the whole time, but it's
It
Relatively
depends
quick.
on how much you care.
wow.
that's always the case. No, I'm
John,
gonna
just
make
start
the optimal
bringing
move
a
here.
chess timer.
What, for me?
Yeah, for you.
yourself.
No,
I
it'll
was
make,
going to say, it's
'cause
you're
Chris
the one
isn't
that's the
here.
bigger problem.
I mean, yes, in
it'll
dominant
make
species,
John happy.
the the necessity for a chess timer was apparent
For,
But
for
I'm
who?
just
for all of us.
For all of
to
us.
be
Fair
completely
enough.
honest,
I'm
Yeah.
fine with that.
no.
I-
I'm just saying
the
from-
level of complexity and stakes, I guess, is one way of putting it, between this and Dominant Species,
Stakes.
completely.
Well, no stakes.
No,
is-
you were the mammals.
He was the mammals.
I was the mammals. That's
But
true.
no, because you're right. Because it does feel worse to lose a game that you've just spent 3 hours playing compared to one that you've spent 45 minutes playing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and
'cause-
the thing about Dominant Species is, there was one catastrophe card, but there weren't many volcanoes.
that's true.
You didn't interact with a volcano the way
More
that you would
games
think you would
leave
do in a game about
Yeah.
the primordial
But
world.
I think part of the stakes angle as well is that it depends on how much the rest of the game it impacts,
Mhm.
right? Like this, the move I make this turn isn't really going to be substantially important for everything else, right?
Yeah,
Like
you
I'm-
don't have to chain like 6 moves
Yeah.
together to
whereas,
make one.
Whereas
Right.
other games, kind of like Dominant Species or Mosaic or whatever, the moves I make now are going to impact what I can do on my next turn, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm building. I have to build my engine. I have to do whatever, so on and so forth. And so if I play badly now, in an hour and a half, when we're still playing the same game, I could be having a very different experience depending on how good of a move I make. Whereas something like this, you got to think about it in like a strategic sense, but you're not building an engine.
You just gotta
Mm-mm.
live in the moment.
Right.
Yeah, you just gotta. There's no pressure.
Look, when the world is ending and this mountain is raining fire down upon you, you just gotta go.
You just gotta let Steven
You just gotta block the
pick
gates
you up
and
and throw
laugh.
you in the volcano.
That is my favorite thing to do in this game.
Is
though,
just block
is
the
just
gates.
block
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
gates.
Because I think the game
No.
ends once they're all.
Oh, because there's no way
blocked.
out.
Yeah.
Which is
If there's no way out, so if you completely
Funny.
encircle a group of people
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
or a
yeah.
group of they're just
They're just
completely taken
torched.
off the board because there's no way out. So
You'll need to wait to watch the lava slowly
I mean, we could.
encroach on their toes.
we could watch.
all right, well, let's
No,
get
that
this
would
one
be
going.
here.
I am ready to pitch some of Cody's people into. I'm ready to pitch your guys' people into the volcano. So
every sticker that's sold for me saves a meeple, please.
All right. Let's
Get out your wallet.
get out your wallet.
Steven's gonna cut that.
let's burn
Be
some
sure
people
to
in
support
a horrible
Cody.
way.
I showed up.
Every Samuel game has an asterisk. No, every Samuel win has an asterisk.
No,
We
every,
should
every
we could put that
single
on a
game.
mug.
It's almost all the games. in
Yeah,
the
when I
podcast.
lose, it doesn't have an asterisk.
When you
No,
lose,
you lost fairly.
yeah,
you
I
fought
mean,
well, but you
it's
lost
your fault.
fairly.
Yeah, it just
depends on who won and who's keeping score.
all right. So we managed to knock out 2 games of Downfall of Pompeii. It's that quick, and I would say we had fun both games. Is that the consensus around the table?
Yeah.
No, I don't
I mean, it's no monopoly, but yeah.
I mean, so John, Cody, you both lost both games.
Oh, heavily.
Like you didn't win either one. So
Thank you for
And
clarifying.
I got
Just to reiterate, you guys scored the least points both times, right?
cumulative, overall,
but
sequentially,
let-
however else you want to say it. Yes.
But both times I was, Cody and I were both stuck with the extra lava draws where you don't get to do bupkis.
And
It's
that's a
true.
good point.
And
True.
that's
I think
why
that's
we
a
lost.
defining factor.
That's
So
a good
there's
point, actually.
2 asterisks.
Alternatively,
next to your
I'd like
names.
to tell you I
Just-
won both games.
just to
'cause
Samuel's
I
name.
had the most fun.
Well, that's right. You'd have 1 asterisk. He'd have 2.
yeah.
And
How would
that's
I
kind
didn't
of rounding
win.
off.
I came in last the first
Nah,
game.
No.
Yeah, pretty bad actually.
Nah, you were
Yeah.
ahead of me because you had less
Oh, no, y'all
people
were
in the
tied.
volcano.
Y'all were tied.
Yeah, we both got the same pitiful amount of people out to
All right, well, you
scrape together.
You don't have to say that.
I'm not
mean
exactly sure why,
existence.
why
You
your
can leave-
tiebreaker is getting the most people killed.
It's not. It's getting the least people.
Well,
killed.
yes.
Yeah, having the
But I
the
had-
least in the volcano is the tiebreaker.
I had more,
Okay,
so
that's fair
I
enough.
lost
Well-
worse.
So getting the least people out on the board. I guess the idea is that you had the least to work with. But in this game, you got to kind of figure, Carl, he's toast. He ain't getting out. I mean, you're moving the people that have a shot at it, and the rest you're leaving behind. So even if you get a ton of people out on the board in the first phase of this game, That's not necessarily helping you because, first of all, everybody's gunning for you because your color's out there more than everybody else, and some of them are bound
there's
to be in
also
the middle.
more.
You're like, I only get to move 2 each time, no matter what.
you
Doesn't matter how
still-
many I have out.
Yeah, there's also more opportunity for you to be targeted if there's more of you out on the board.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
to be honest, a lot of the times it's just incidental, right? I can put a piece down that vaporizes somebody, so I may as well. And
I mean,
there's-
if I could ever put down a tile on top of blue, I was going to. And if it happened that yellow was there, I was sad, but I was going to do it.
Did
You were still
ever
gonna torture
vaporize
your
your
own
own
did that.
people?
I didn't have a choice. That's why.
I know I vaporized my own people, but
I never vaporize
they
my own
weren't
people.
getting out anyway.
I will gleefully vaporize anyone else's pieces, but I avoid my own.
Wow,
That's
that's
why-
pretty ethnocentric of you there,
That's why
Sam.
I had a better way.
Blue is the best.
Well, we'll see who sells the most stickers, and then we'll determine which color is
And
best.
right now, I'm in the lead as best I can tell.
That's true.
Does buying your own sticker count?
Yeah, as we just established,
I-
John is in the lead.
I have one, and nobody else has any.
I'm getting paid soon.
I'm not.
You know,
A lot of
you,
stickers.
you'll be awash in cash. You'll be able to buy a sticker.
2 stickers.
2 stickers.
All right,
Oh,
so
boy.
final thoughts?
Are we
I'll
final
jump
thoughting
into
on
the final
final
thoughts.
thoughts?
I'm just kidding.
I want to talk more about melting people.
2 minutes
Talk more
in.
about melding people.
I mean, I really don't know what to say here, to be honest. I knew going into this game that I liked it, and then we played it, and
Still liked it.
I
Still
still
like
like
it.
it.
Did you like it more now that you've played it again?
No, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be.
See, the problem I have with this game is once you're playing it, it's pretty simple. Setting the deck is a colossal pain because you gotta make like 6 different. You gotta make 9 different piles. You gotta shuffle certain cards in certain places, and there were a lot of games like in this era that had this kind of weird. You've got to set the deck kind of tone.
I mean, that's fair. It is fairly convoluted, and it creates.
It's the only it's the
you
only
gotta
complaint
find-
I can make about
Find
this
a
game.
nitpick.
This is literally a perfect game in my estimation, and that's really the only complaint I have about
it's
it.
a fair nitpick, right? It is a pretty complicated deck to build.
So you read the paragraph in the rules and you set up the deck. It takes
Look, I'm trying to
There's your-
create
There's your nitpick.
I'm
is
trying
the-
to create controversy by complaining about this perfect game, and that's all I can come up with.
It's not perfect. There's a movement rule at the bottom of the back page of
that's
the rule
right.
book
There's
that
2 exceptions
2
to the
people
movement
here
rules.
didn't agree with.
Well, 2 people here didn't know existed until.
Yeah, he didn't read the whole rule
Oh,
to
by
us.
the way, yeah, my guys are out. Oh, didn't I tell you about this part of this
On the
rule?
first explanation to me, it made sense.
It seems to me I'm trying to
I
figure
just
out.
didn't make
I'm trying
use
to
of
figure
it.
out why they don't just say, "Hey, if you're the only guy in the square, you move 1 space," and the other guys, however. See, I'm not exactly sure. That's one of those things where the original rule was you moved the number of people in your space, and then they started wiggling, saying, "Well, it doesn't work out exactly the way we want, so we'll make it that you can move the same guy twice, but if you move another, it's just
The game needed a catch-up mechanic to piss John
it's
off.
needed some sort
You know
of.
what? It's interesting you say it that way because it actually is kind of a catch-up mechanic where if you didn't have that rule and you had one guy in a space, they're kind of stuck, right? Because they get to go one at a time. And
shit
if
happens.
I can only move them once, then I move them once. And the next turn, if I went into a space with somebody there, they get a boost. They get to move 2 spaces now, not me.
But that's
so it kind of makes
It's
sense.
from that era of simple elegance, and that rule is kind of like, well, we're pretty much simple and elegant, but except for these couple of weird things that we're going to bring in. So I just, it's just sort of odd that it's there, and I get the feeling they play tested it and said, sometimes this just doesn't work out the way we want it to. So let's kind of put one more paragraph in the rules that kind of explains how that.
I mean, I
works.
think it's nice that you get the opportunity to sacrifice your movement for 2. Instead of moving 2 pieces, you can move one guy twice if he started in a tile by himself. That's the rule.
But why shouldn't the rule just be move 2 guys and you can move 1 guy twice, which would make sense. And at that point, we get to watch the guy in the middle of the board make that mad dash to try and get out.
I think the reason it isn't that is because that's what would happen, right? There wouldn't be a kind of migration of pieces towards the edges. It would just be every turn we each remove 1 guy.
You would take the guy closest to the center, move him twice, figure out the way you get the most movement
and then
from that
leave.
spot
Yeah.
and run as far as you can.
But because you can't do that unless your first move is only one space, because you can't do that, you actually do get this effect where you end up having to say, well, there's 2 people here, so I'm going to have to move 2 spaces. And that's not going to get me anywhere, but I can't move this guy again, so I'm going to do that to just get a little bit closer.
Sounds like a relatively arbitrary difference, I'll be honest.
I'm not sure that it is.
You know, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, because we played a whole game
without that rule
kind
except
of
for Sam, he
being
was aware
top of
it.
mind.
It was
And now that it is top of mind, I'm
I did
looking at the
mention
map, and I could see where I would potentially place pieces in different spots so that I am a lone piece next to a group of pieces.
Right. So you move
So
your
that
one
that
space
one
to get
dude
to the
can
4Z
jet across the board.
and then jet across the
Yeah, but in exchange for that,
You're only moving one
you're
guy.
only moving one guy.
So, I get it. I'm okay with it. I would like to, play again, not tonight, but sometime, and really drive home that is a rule so that we all are playing on the same level. But I think it could actually potentially bring a new layer of depth to the game. Because let's be honest, it's a pretty simple game,
It is.
aside from building the deck.
Yeah, it makes Mississippi Queen look complicated.
No dice,
it
no flipping.
There's no
really
dice, but there is
anything,
there is a good amount of chance here, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, just from the draw of the bag. But
Just from the draw of the bag
And the
there's-
cards.
But for the most part, I mean, once the board's set, once Vesuvius is erupting and you're running for your lives, it's pretty, I would say it's pretty no luck, because you got 6 different tiles that you can draw. And so it's actually kind of like rolling a die, because it's pretty even, but I think the strategic and the tactical decisions that you get to make in the running away part are, while it's a very simple game, I think it's got a pretty complex, or it's a pretty deep decision space. So
Yeah.
I do appreciate that for this game.
I do,
Because-
and I appreciate how, like, this is very much a game where you hurt the other player's board state, right? Like, you're going to be removing their pieces and blocking them and so on. But for me, at least, it's a game where it's hard to get mad about that, just because there is this sense of inevitability, right? Like, it's not a question of if the lava is going to block the gate. It's a question of when. And so if those guys get swallowed and burned up before I get them to safety, well, that was kind of my choice, because I didn't move them last turn, and really I could have, right? Like, it happens.
Yeah, and when you get how many pieces were we having out on the boards? Like
That
12 to
last
14?
game was
Yeah.
like 12 to 14.
Yeah, about 12 to 14 people get out on the
4-player
board.
game, yeah.
And
Because that'll be different depending on how many players you have.
you think you think the decisions are pretty easy. You move the guys that are closest to the gates out. But in actuality, there are more grouped up people in the middle that you need to move as well, and the opportunity to move them farther is at the beginning. So
If you don't move them before the other players do, then your guys don't go as far.
yeah.
So
it kinda
you
hurt
want
me.
to get away from the lava too.
I think the part what hurt
Go ahead.
me and John was going after Stephen and Samuel was you're already starting to see people leave the bigger groups, and so
Right.
you're not
Yeah.
going as far.
Right.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
Yeah, the luck
somebody
of the
has-
draw for you guys was unfortunate.
It's interesting
Twice,
that it
yeah.
specifies you put out 6 lava tiles, and then
you start moving.
Which
that-
is another sort of odd
It
feels
doesn't
like-
wrinkle in
matter
the
how
rule.
many players.
Does
No,
that
it
matter how
doesn't.
many?
No, it's always 6.
It's always 6. It does kind of feel like it should be double the number of players, because then you go around
Or the
twice,
same amount. Either,
and then,
whichever way.
but I guess they wanted there to be a certain amount of lava on the board, and like 8 was too much.
Theoretically, one of each tile, but you don't just start with it there.
Yeah,
So it kinda-
there's 6 types, so in theory you could draw one of each kind. And
So
start
what we're
with those.
saying is, this is a deeply flawed game.
No.
That they tried to patch over in the rules
No.
to make it play well.
This is the most perfect game I've ever played.
This is a great game.
it is a
Everyone should play it. It's pretty readily available. There was a reprint a few years ago.
More perfect than Buffy?
yeah.
Oh. Well, you know what? We'll talk about that when we get to our rating portion. But
More perfect than Mississippi Queen?
It does a different thing than Mississippi
It's a
Queen.
different perfect. There are
It's
many
an alternative perfect.
there are many facets to perfect.
But I
And
don't
this is-
recall Mississippi Queen being deeply flawed with a couple of rules that they had to kind of
No,
dicker
that's the
around
same.
with.
I mean,
Any
some of
game
the
has
some of the
something.
bumping
Earlier,
rules,
we were coming to a consensus
Yeah.
some
that
of
this
the
was
bumping
deeply
rules can
flawed.
be kind of
Yeah, some of the bumping rules were a little off.
Consensus with the voices in your head.
Right? John's over here like, there was a consensus. I said so.
Don't you listen? But no,
But I can see why you might feel like 8 was too many tiles of lava to go on the board. So maybe you do 1 tile per player and then 1 tile per player and you can only move 1 guy. And then you go to the normal.
no. See, you're overcomplicating it.
Yeah.
How
So
is that
this game
overcomplicated?
plays 2, 3,
No
and
one's
4.
complicated than the movement rule.
Yeah.
This game plays 2, 3, or 4, and so when you do that, the easiest number to come up with is 6. Yes, 2 people get screwed in the 4-player game, but in a 2-player game, each person can put 3 tiles, and then they're going to start moving. In a 3-player game, each person's going to put 2 tiles down, and then they start moving.
That's fair. And then you do get like the same amount of lava on the board no matter
It seems
the
to
player
me with a
count.
4-player game, you just make it 4 because we have plenty of people that are getting burned out, so I don't think that wouldn't be much of an issue.
Could've used more
Or with a 4-player, if you want to get another kind of rules patch, you could say, okay, then everybody puts down 1 and nothing happens, and then everybody puts down 1 and you get to move 1 guy.
I thought that was too complicated for you, John.
And
He
well,
thought
it's
about
no more complicated than the other piece. No, he was the one who said it was too complicated.
I'm not saying it's complicated. I'm just saying
It's incredibly complicated.
the amount of space, the amount of typography you would need to put that on
You'd
this
need
8-page
another
rule book.
paragraph.
And that would need another page. And that we can't do.
And that's what I'm saying. This is an 8-page rule book with half of the pages being.
Half the pages are pictures.
like historic art.
I mean,
okay, the first page has historic art.
and the the typeface is pretty substantial. So
Mhm.
I mean, this is
It's a pretty light rule book.
very light.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess I would say it's no more actually, you know what? It is no more complicated than the first part of the game where you have multiple stages. Where until you draw the first Vesuvius card, you don't get to place any relatives out. And then the rules
Which is just
change.
Extra people.
You know, that's another place where the rules are kind of odd.
You didn't like
Boy.
that part? You wish we just put one person out forever.
Boy, I mean, it's just, the warts that are in that rule book. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, that should be like an 18-page rule book.
You notice he didn't think of that one.
Yeah.
I know. Well, no,
had to be
so far,
brought to
Sam,
his
I haven't
attention.
thought of any of them. But you keep bringing them up, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of screwy, too, now that you mention it.
John actually hates this game.
Yeah, John's decided he doesn't like
Yeah,
it.
John
This
is-
a deeply flawed
John's
game.
to the point where he wants to pitch this game over the boat.
It's fine.
He came in second. Like,
It's
both
fine. This is
times.
He did, yeah.
This is not a game where this is not a stunning game of deep thought. This is no dominant species. I mean, you sit here, you throw your buddy's stuff into the volcano, and you have fun
You
because
chat,
of it.
you hang out.
Yeah.
You screw over some people.
Yeah, this is a game you can play with 3 beers in
I
you,
didn't
and it probably
especially
isn't gonna
feel like
affect your game
Dominant
much.
Species was a game of great thought.
Yeah,
To
it's
be
just 'cause
honest.
you're
And that's why
playing
you did
I did
so
lose.
poorly.
That's fair. That's
Well,
fair.
you lost fairly solidly.
I
Didn't
did,
You?
I mean,
and
fair-
you're
hold
usually
on, let me-
like a contender.
Does that
Let
mean
me-
I was thinking too much about this game? Is that
Let me
why I
let me
lost?
pull up the scores for dominant
I
species
didn't
real
feel
quick.
like I was thinking.
I mean, that's the thing. So we were talking about dominant species, how
Well, we
vastly
also,
different the board state can be at the end of the worker placement phase,
Yeah.
and how it can completely screw your plans.
Yeah, and you think you got all worked out, and then suddenly there's no food on the board for you.
and there was a pretty big asterisk next to that game of Dominant Species where we ended early and didn't.
Oh, we ended 3
Look-
cards early.
And we ended a full round early, and those were long rounds with a lot happening, and we didn't look up how the end game scoring worked, and so John almost lapped everybody else because
No, he almost slapped you.
For the
because
viewers
I
at
was
home.
smart enough to realize that it might be a good idea to get to the properties that scored the most points.
John looks very perplexed right now.
John looks very mad is what he looks right now.
Oh, no, I couldn't care
He's
less.
seething with rage.
Well, I mean, we're
Like
we're-
Vesuvius.
No, I
but
just-
we're talking
We're talking about,
the
but
volcano of anger.
You're correct. I wasn't thinking about how to score at the end of the game because I didn't look at how end of game scoring worked.
So,
And you didn't look into how moving around the
Well-
board worked or putting your people out on the board.
No, I knew
it was
how
just,
that
it
worked.
was
Yeah.
it was
You
just
just
it was just scoring at the end of the round is what I was moving for. That's why I was moving guys because I knew I was going to score. But that's dominant species. We're talking Downfall of Pompeii
It has
here.
an easy score system.
And it's curious because when we first turned the microphones on for the post game show, I'm like, well, it's okay game. It's pretty simple. The rules are pretty light. And then you mentioned 3 exceptions to the rules. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of weird too. Now that you mention it, and yeah, that's kind of weird too. So maybe the rules are a little less straightforward than you would think. Because game that was 2005, maybe 2002, something like that.
2006.
Oh, so it's a new game, but it's. I mean, this is
It's a new game.
This is an era when there are a lot of games like this where the rules are pretty doggone simple. I mean, you might get some nice emergent play out of simple rules. This game has kind of an exception in every piece of the rules where now you don't get to do this until this comes out, and you don't get to do that until that comes out, and depending on what order the cards come out, you can kind of end up snookered like Cody and I did. And
I mean, honestly, I was thinking about it. Like so the way the deck is set, and like I said, the deck being set is the worst part of this game. But the way the deck is set, you have
and the deck, boy.
8 cards that go on top before the first 80-79, which is when you start getting to add population or extra population to the board. We all know we're going to get to play 2 cards.
Yeah, I got stuck on that one too, didn't I?
Yeah.
Jeez.
The second game, you got stuck on that.
Wow, I didn't realize it, Cody, but I hated this game.
I realized that for you a lot earlier than this. You can see it in your eyes.
You're right.
My
That
point-
is 8 cards, no matter the player count.
No matter. So my point is, like, having 2 people on the board is part of the setup, really. Like, why
Yeah.
don't you just throw 2 people out at random? Like, okay,
you can
I want to
decide where
pick.
you wanna put
I
them.
want to pick space 2 and space 3.
Yeah,
Or
before you look at your cards, you just
you
like
just
the
put 2
old-fashioned
down.
worker placement. You put 2 down.
You could do that.
I mean,
and that'd be
it just
fine.
seems like that's a lot of extra steps to just say you get 2 people on the board before the game starts.
Well, I know. I mean, both times, but it only worked the second time. Kind of is I put people out based on what I had in my hand.
Of course.
Right? I
You
wasn't
kind of
just
have to.
yeah. Well, no, I mean like I had 4 cards, and I went, I have 2 3s. I'm going to use one of them now to put a guy in 3, and I'm not going to play my second 3 until
you get past that
until I
barrier.
get a bonus guy for it.
Yeah,
right?
because I had 2 pairs the second game, and I'm like, well, crap, I'm kind of over a barrel. I need to play to each. So
Yeah, and it is a little more complicated to set it up so that you have this like precursor phase where you're kind of seeding the board and
It's like
and
a
getting it
pre-phase
set up.
1 phase.
Yeah, but that's fine. You know what? I think it enriches the experience, and if we're gunning for bonus guys right off the bat, because I mean, nobody played into the same building
Yeah.
until there's a bonus for it.
Yeah.
You just don't do it.
I mean,
and so you
honestly-
end up with a bunch of
I'm gonna
options.
do it next time.
I don't
Yeah.
believe you.
Yeah,
no,
I'm-
you're saying on your next turn, you hold it on to, or you just
No,
saying,
he's
No,
saying
next time we
then-
play this game, I'm going to try and match everyone before relatives exist. See what happens.
I mean, you could almost just deal out 2 cards to each person and say, put your guy down on the board based on those 2 cards.
You could. You
And then
wouldn't
you
lose
would-
much.
And then you
could.
wouldn't have to deal with the extra 80-79 card. I mean, but even still, it's not that big a
you
deal.
think
But it's
the-
just.
It's not. You're
But
still
it's-
going to have to deal out like 4 cards.
maybe I'm starting to hate this game.
I
We
was
should
going to
probably
say,
stop talking about this game soon. But
I just-
you think
I don't-
maybe
I mean,
the second 80 card...
It's so weird that I started
should
out
be
loving this
put-
game, and now it's
It's
just like
just
all I
turned the
can
corner.
all I can see is flaws.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, a completely patched set of rules to
it's
try
like,
and paper this
It's
over.
like in animation when
I'm going to stop you there because I'm already bored. But
Damn.
dang. No, it's like in
Hard
animation when the finished product looks really good, but if you slow it down and you zoom in, it looks horrible, right? Like the model distorts and twists, and it no longer looks like it should or moves the way it
I'm
ought
bored
to.
now, too.
yeah, I'm still bored.
But the finished product looks good.
Anyway, my thought.
I'm sorry, I just woke up.
The second AD card, if it were put so that everyone played the same amount of cards, any big changes?
you would have to. That would be another.
It'd be more.
How do you
deck
calculate
building.
that?
You just
I mean,
count
you
how many
count,
cards
you count
are
the cards
between
instead
the
of
two
shuffling
ADs.
it in the bottom 10.
You already know where the first AD is.
I like games where you don't know where the phase is going to turn or where the game is going to end. Like Chris had this huge mountain that he was going to die on about everyone having the same amount of turns with one of the games that we played previously. I can't remember which one it was, but I mean, for a game where you have 10 turns per player, that makes sense. But in a game where you're playing 30 turns per player, if somebody only gets 29,
Doesn't matter.
it probably isn't that big a deal.
And the nature of any game is you have to ask yourself if you really give a damn that much based upon how the game plays. And this game is sort of a game of absurdity. I mean, you're burning people to death, and you have to take this with a certain level of humor or just.
And to be fair, I think it would feel better if with 4 players that wasn't a penalty, right? Like if I draw the last Vesuvius, I've now probably taken more actions in the first phase than the other players, right? And then both times I drew the last Vesuvius, and then you and John were at a disadvantage because we put out 6 tiles. So not only did you not get as many opportunities to put people onto the board, you also got to move last. When we
Right.
started moving people around.
Right.
So I wonder if it would feel different, or if it wouldn't matter as much, like you didn't get as many actions, if it wasn't such a disadvantage.
Yeah, it's a light game.
It is a light game.
It's a game you play when you're with your family at the cabin by the beach. I mean, it's not something where you need to get that in detail. Some people could really get out of joint on something like that, and I joke about it, but I don't care that much. On a game like this, you don't care that much because it's not a brain burning heads down sort of work the angles sort of game. So I mean, in a lot of games, in the older games, and even stuff that requires a little bit more brain power, you end up with an odd number of turns because you get to the end of the deck, or or somebody turns over a card. Lords of Vegas, the card is shuffled into the bottom. So many cards and so on. So I mean that comes up all the time. It's just Pompeii is not enough of a. There's no, you just don't care that much if you win or lose. I mean, you're here to screw your buddy by throwing his pieces.
Yeah. And I think that's to its benefit, right? It's not high stakes, and even if you lose, you still get to block off the last gate and doom people to.
It's the best feeling to block an entire
what do we say?
circle of the city.
Preservation.
Yes, preserve them for all eternity.
You get to preserve half of the city by placing the last tile, and you get to see the hope.
Yeah, it's funny because at times blocking the gate is more rewarding than actually burning the people. And at the end of the second game, me and I think one of Steven's players were locked in. There was no way we were getting out. So I started rushing towards him. I'm like, oh no, we're going to hug each other before we die. And then I think Cody put down the tile, said, no, you're not. And dropped the tile between the two of us that kept that from happening.
I think it was on your head, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I was right on his head.
Oh, you burned me on that one?
Oh yeah.
Well.
Burned you and blocked the path.
And blocked the path.
There's not a better feeling in a game I've had in a long time
we've
than just
played
blocking
games.
Everything so that there's no escape, but especially just blocking one gate in front of someone. And they got to turn around and go towards another one. You block that gate.
They
just have to keep changing their mind.
I distinctly remember games where we've had the lava kind of spread around the sides and block a bunch of the gates super early. And everyone kind of funnels towards that last open gate, and you just
slowly.
And every you see someone pull a tie, you're like, "Are they gonna do it?
Are they just gonna do it? End it all for us, or is it just gonna chase us?"
It's from a role playing perspective, you get to be a dark god for just a short period of time.
Well, when you're placing the tile, you get to feel like because you're malevolent. You're like, what am I gonna do? And when you're watching the tile come down, you're like, we're so close to escape. We just need a little bit longer, just a little bit more.
But your fellow player gets to pick who lives and who dies.
Yeah. I think that's part of the charm is that you do get that
charm.
Sure. That's part of the fun though, is you do get to watch people head towards a gate and you can go, nope.
Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And to be fair, there's a lot of gates on the board.
There are a lot of gates. There's more than that.
1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6,
7.
Yeah. There's 7 gates.
But they seem to close
Corner
up real
gates are
doggone quick.
easily forgotten.
Yeah.
And I do think it's interesting how the board is laid out, where you have some of the gates are like, there's the one gate on this side of the board that is actually pretty far from all the lava tiles to begin with. It's actually pretty isolated.
Yeah, farther than most. Yeah.
Compared to like
It's
over
like
here.
5 away from any lava tile.
Yeah, I mean, compared to like there's a lava tile immediately adjacent
So we've
to
just
a gate.
figured out
There's
how
2,
imbalanced
there's
the game
2.
is. That's a good point.
Well, it's not, because there's no population centers over here.
Yeah, the population centers are all around.
All you can do is fill the neutral
gate.
buildings.
Yeah, the population centers are over in the center, and there's some neutral buildings, but these buildings are much closer to the 2 sources of lava on that side of the map than
That's a good point.
the other side. So it's interesting because you kind of have the one side of the map where the lava is quick to block the gates, and the other side of the map where the lava can be quick to burn the people. And you kind of have different pressures.
So the game, the map has some favored ground and some disfavored ground, has bonuses and disadvantages, which I always like in a game.
I think that's well done, yeah.
My apologies, gentlemen.
Steven, what are your thoughts on
to
the
do
layout
return.
of the map?
We were just talking about how the map actually has different...
Some
the
crunchy
sides
goodness.
are designed in different fashion. On this part over here, the lava tiles are right next to the gates, and over here
It's a little more open,
it's
but
a little more open, but the lava tiles are right next to where the people are and are poised to separate the 2 sides of the city.
yeah, and then in the middle, it's more concentrated as well. I think it's interesting. It gives you a lot of interesting decisions in the first phase as to where you put your people down.
It is, but to be honest, I found it hard to think about where the people are going down. It's easy to get caught up in that. I want to get as many of my people on the board as possible, and I don't really care where they end up. I'll worry about that later.
Figure that part out.
So for me, when I'm going into an empty building, like when I'm starting a building, it's always about where I can go. Because looking at the 3 here, there's a building there's a building with 3 spaces and a building with 2 spaces for the number 3. Now, the building with 3 spaces is right next to where lava can come out. So there's a good chance that it's going to get covered. Now, the 2 space is diagonal to 2 lava spaces. So that means it's going to take 2 turns for lava to get to it.
From either one.
Yeah. So, there's the chance of, if I go to the 3, yes, I'll get some more people out, but at the same time, whoever's in there has a better chance. Has a higher risk of getting eaten or getting sacrificed before they get to move. So there's a lot of...
This is actually a very deep thinking game.
You could think very hard about this game if you wanted to.
I wonder, because the neutral houses are often better positioned for escape than the colored houses.
Yes.
So I wonder, I mean, obviously it'd be a pain to track, but I'm curious what the numbers end up being for escape for someone in a neutral house versus in a colored house.
So the other part of the neutral houses versus the colored houses is the neutral houses it's going to be very difficult to bring in family members by playing into a neutral house, because the only way you can actually start a move or start a placement in a neutral house is if your number is completely full.
Yes.
So anytime you're playing in a neutral, it's because you've brought relatives. So when you bring in relatives, it doesn't trigger more relatives. So the neutrals do get full, but they don't allow you to place extra people on the board because they're already the extra people.
Yeah, and I think it's also another facet of the game that if it's a colored house, you do have a little more say of who ends up there, right? Whereas a neutral house, it could be 1 from each player, and then
here goes the neighborhood.
The first person to move out of that house gets to move farther. Like this there's a neutral house here with 3 spots in it.
Mm-hmm.
The first person to move, if that house is full, they just get to leave the city.
Yeah, they get out automatically.
They get out because it's only 3 spaces to go. The second person can only move 2 spaces, so they don't get to make it out of the city for 1 turn. And that's kind of like, that's true over here.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a couple places.
There's true of a couple
That's
places.
true in all the spaces, whether it's the ones you can place to directly or whether it's the overflows.
And I think it being a neutral house means it's more likely to have a bunch of different colors. And then you have a pressure to, when you're moving guys, if you don't move out of that space, somebody else might. So do you move that guy, or do you say, well, he's in a pretty safe position, I'm going to move somebody else?
Yeah, or do you wait to be the last one there so that you can move that guy twice, use that to skip over? Because a lot of those houses are right where the doorways are.
Except there's not a good place to move there to skip out of. There's no other guarantee.
It depends on where other people have
But everybody's rushing for the gate, so there's going to be other player pieces
there.
You're
going to bet that there's going to be other player pieces there?
Well, this is a game where
can do your
bet
double
on
move.
anything, but you use what you can use, and that's where that double move suddenly comes into play.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's part of the fun, right? There's lots of little bets and hedges you can make, but in the end, it's really not that big a deal. It's just fun to try your luck.
It's not a game where you're going to have a master plan. As your turn comes up, you go, okay, what am I going to work with, and how am I going to make this work?
Yeah, sometimes it's not even worth planning your next turn until, the person before you.
I mean, especially
This
especially
could
in
be
a
a three-bear
four-player game. Well, especially with 4 players, there's going to be 3 more tiles down before your next turn.
Yeah.
The place you're looking at could be toast.
And I got to be honest, I don't know that I'd enjoy this as much with 2 or 3. 3 would probably be okay. 2, I don't know.
Yeah, 2 is, it doesn't, I don't think there's enough chaos on the board.
Yeah, 2 would definitely be a lot more calculated.
And it's like
Boy,
playing.
I don't know. That seems to me head-to-head.
Yeah, head-to-head.
This could be an interesting game.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It'd be
it'd be a different game, much like
it'd
like
be intense.
It would be a game of just simple hatred between 2 people.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a game like when you play Biblios with 2. It's head-to-head.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're making all the decisions versus one other person. So you can kind of, when it's your turn, you can really internalize like who's getting what.
Yep.
I'd be interested.
Yeah.
And so it's a completely different game, and it's like Azul. Like Azul is a completely different game when you play it with more than 2 people.
Yeah. So this game more perfect than Biblios?
No, definitely not.
I think perfect's a strong word for any
Like
game
I said, there
I've
are
ever
facets,
played.
and we have been trending toward hating this game. So
Have
perfect.
I thought we were back on the upswing of loving this game.
Oh, well,
I've been there the whole time.
I had to
Mine's
run
plateau.
I had to run upstairs for a second. So
These guys got soft on me.
I've been on cloud 9 this whole time.
I
loved it.
I'm
I mean,
still
as it
kind of
stands
on,
right now, I'm rating this a 5. I haven't made my final decision yet, but
Yeah, it's still going down. Like I haven't hit
It
the
was at a
upswing
9
back
earlier,
yet.
though. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
It'll average out.
So, John, you kind of threw out a number there. Why don't we get to that part of the episode? Because
okay.
What scale are we using?
Well, it's always the BGG 1 to 10 scale.
Can you explain that scale for me? I forgot.
It's 1 to 10, and it's on Board Game Geek. We never have actually read out.
Never read the definitions of
The
1 through
viewers
10.
can find it on their own.
Yes, and they shouldn't read it either because it's absurd.
Absolutely absurd.
They're just numbers.
It's absurd.
So
Yeah, you know how to do a 1 to 10.
Yeah,
Okay?
so-
just do a 1 to 10.
Sam, you won the last game.
Woo.
We'll let you go first. Tell us what your final thoughts are. Are you on the loving this because it's near perfect, or are you on the hating this because there's just so many flaws? Are you somewhere in the middle?
I don't
Deep,
agree
deep
with either of
flaws.
those statements, to be honest. I don't know. Stop trying to pigeonhole me. It's a good game. It's fun. You get to throw people into volcano and block off the gates and hope that your people make it out alive, and it hits a lot of notes, right? I enjoy putting down lava tiles, and I enjoy spreading across the city. It's fun. I like both phases. It's easily a 7.
Okay. So, who wants to go next? Because I think me and you tied, right, John?
In the last game?
In the last game.
Yeah, there is a tiebreaker, but I'm not sure we
Okay, so I won the tiebreaker, so I'll go next.
You're next.
But I don't know, I haven't decided if I love or hate this game.
Well, then, John, you go. You clearly hate this game.
I don't clearly hate the game.
John has a lot of vitriol.
No, this game is great. I love it every time I play it, and I lament the fact that we don't play it more. It's 45 minutes. We played it twice tonight, pretty easily.
Yeah, I think the second play was closer to half an hour.
And
it's
it's
10,
only
10
like
now.
10 o'clock. So we got started around 8, and we did the pre-recording, and we set the game up twice, and have played it twice. So, it's just a fun game, and I really wish this was one that we got out more often. Now, I will say, T-light technology has advanced since I bought this last one, so I am going to have to invest in a stronger lamp to give that volcano ambiance that it really needs.
Yeah, but I don't think you should turn it on until we draw the AD-79
yes, for sure.
card.
Until Vesuvius seethes.
Actually starts bubbling.
Yeah, so,
You
with
have
that in
colored
mind...
lights down here. We could
You can
set
do,
some volcano lighting.
Oh, yeah, dim it, tint it red.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
I mean,
some sound
because
effects.
you can get those LED little pucks that are about this size, and you could totally like
generator.
program it to be orange and red.
Something with right. The smell of human flesh burning. There's
Yeah.
Some
there's a lot of
rumbling,
improvements
some
you
like
could do to this game.
screams on the soundtrack.
Just a little tiny grill.
Now, see, now you're taking it too far. But this is a great little game. It should be pretty available. I looked online, and you can get a copy secondhand on Board Game Geek for like $40. Absolutely worth it. There's a new printing. There's an older printing. Get whichever one you can. This is just such a great little game. And with that, I mean, this is about as near a perfect 7 as a game can be. And like I said, I'm looking forward to pulling this one out more often in the future.
So now it's to me?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a fun game. There's a couple of odd rules. Definitely reread the rule book if you haven't played it in a while. Make sure you get those odd little... Of course, you're going to be doing that to get the card deck set up anyway, because those rules are a little crazy too. But it's fun. It's not the first one I'd pull off the shelf, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of very good games you have up there, Stephen, and some other places
But you
too.
never recommend them, John.
I mean, caveat, 45-minute game. If we're in the mood for like a 2-hour game, we're not going to play this 3 times.
Right, and that's always the every game has a place where it fits in very well, or a place where you're like, nah, that's not the one to play tonight. So no, this is fun, and I enjoyed it. I'm joking about the rules being deeply flawed and all that. There's a couple of oopsies in there that you need to make sure you do them right, but other than that, it's fine. I enjoyed it, and it's not a game where anybody's going to get terribly uptight whether they win or lose. I mean, it's more fun to like throw your buddies guys in the volcano than it is to worry about winning the game. But there's some interest here, and very tactical. Pretty much on your turn, you got to figure out what's the best you can do with what you got, because there is a lot of luck in it. Your tile pull is lucky, and where people have decided to move is lucky, and you just got to kind of play off of that. So it's a 7. It's fine. And I don't think I'm gonna turn away from it, but I think there's other stuff I'd grab first. So that's my rate.
You're fired.
Into the volcano with you.
Yes. Sacrifice.
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 No.
No.
Cody?
I missed it. I love this game. I've been thinking about this game since Survive.
Escape from Atlantis?
Escape from Atlantis.
Wow.
Any of the other Survives we've played.
That's a pretty perfect game we're talking about, Cody.
See, now, Survive, Escape from Atlantis is the very definition of a 7. So when you are thinking about how you rate this game, you have to keep in mind.
Figure out that ranking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Survive, very definition of a 7. Like if BGG were to rewrite their 1 through 7s and they wanted to make it simple where people could understand, they'd be like 10, the most perfect game ever. There's nothing wrong with it. The rules make perfect sense. And then 9, and then 8, and then 7 would just say Survive, Escape from Atlantis, and then all the way down.
And everybody would know.
Yeah, and everyone would
okay.
exactly understand what that
that'd
meant.
give you footing for the rest of the ratings
the people
too.
who had never played it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need that context. You just need to know that Survive is the very definition of a 7. I'm sorry to digress. Cody, please tell us about...
But remember, the
Downfall of
volcano is still
full
hungry.
of my people.
Still
Yes,
lit.
I'm well aware it ate me.
Sacrifice.
I love this game. It's very simple still. There's a couple rules here and there that are a little difficult for some to comprehend.
Some people.
Not naming any names.
I did have 2 beers in
And
it.
if your group doesn't like them, just don't play with them. Just simple movement rules. Just don't worry about it.
Yeah, we kind of were rewriting the game when we were talking about it a few
Yeah.
minutes ago.
If you don't like it,
Make your own rules.
throw it out. That's the joy of a simple game like this, is you can do that without really ruining the game.
And hey, it's not like it'll take you a long time to figure out if it works.
Yeah, that's true.
30 to 45 minutes.
I mentioned earlier one of my greatest joys is just encircling a whole group of people, sometimes even including my own, so that there's no escape, and getting to watch them just burn. And that happened both games, where like half the city
It's
burned.
amazing what you find out
See,
about
technically, you're supposed to remove all of those people as soon
It's
as
more
they're
fun if you
surrounded.
don't.
I love the fact that once you've moved all of your guys out that you can, then if they're still on the board, you're basically running around in circles.
Trying
And
to
it's
get
like
as far away from the lava as
people.
you
Yeah,
can.
put another lava tile down, try and cut it in half again.
it's just the idea that people are trapped in the middle and all they're doing is running around in circles. God, that's really macabre, and I feel bad, but at
And
the
it's
same
what
time, it's
probably really
hilarious.
We come from the land
Dang.
of Edgar Allan Poe, so.
That's true.
Actually, not that long. There is actually, we didn't really talk about it. And actually, I
Oh,
don't
there's
think
another rule you
There's
didn't tell
another
us
rule we
about,
missed.
Sam?
There's
It's
historical
invisible ink.
context
Oh,
at the very beginning. And
Wow.
this is actually, I'm mentioning it because, like, thematically, the game's pretty good,
Mhm.
right? But I did think, it's a little weird that at the very beginning, you're just populating an empty city that is pre-built. I mean, like, it's not a huge deal, but it's a little odd, whatever. And then I looked at it, and it actually says in AD 63, there was a strong earthquake, and a lot of the inhabitants left because they were afraid the volcano was going to erupt.
Well, they were smart
And then they came back
because it didn't erupt for
because it didn't
a
erupt. So
decade.
they kind of trickled back in the following years and
some
rebuilt
kids.
and had some
Yeah,
kids.
property values were low. They could buy in cheap.
And
You
yeah,
know, I
and
bet
so
Ed knew that. I bet if Ed were sitting here playing
He
with us,
would-
he
yeah,
would have
no
been able
doubt.
to tell us that.
and so I think that's what is supposed to be happening is there was an earthquake and everybody ran away and then we're returning and
Yeah, because if you look, some of the buildings are kind of ruined.
oh yeah.
guys. Readings.
I saw
Cool.
that over there and figured, that's just old Roman stuff. But no, that makes more sense.
Yeah,
now.
it does make more sense.
All right,
and then,
all right.
And then it says it erupts again in AD 79 and
That was the end of it.
yeah.
So does it mention the non-egalitarian nature of the society? I was thinking
does.
halfway through the game that you could have some
Mm.
pieces worth 2 points and some
Oh.
pieces
You know,
only
it
worth
actually-
one.
Stop trying to make the game
It does
more
mention
flawed.
famous gladiators and rich patricians returning to the city.
And they
So are we going to do
brought
like
a staff with them.
Are we
Sam.
going to do like survive and just write numbers on the bottom of the guys? And
Good.
That would be interesting because half of your guys could be slaves and the other half could be the rich people.
You know what, Cody? We've digressed. Please continue.
Uh,
You never gave us a
think we-
number.
I think we need
well,
a number.
we interrupted
We
him.
keep
So.
interweaving with it. I'm just gonna give it a volcanic 7.
Volcanic 7.
All right, so get past the rule. Get past the little rules ticks.
Just make sure you give the rule book a read.
It's
That's it.
Just read.
I mean,
Just
it's-
be a Samuel.
it's
Read
fun.
a rule book.
You're gonna have a good time.
And it's short.
Have fun.
You'll have more fun if you buy our stickers.
Buy purple.
What the heck is that on the board?
Purple houses are the best.
I think it's a row of columns.
Oh, it's columns.
It's where they kept Anakin and Leia.
Right,
and
strapped
Obi-Wan
them up when the big
and let out the animals to attack
funny-looking
them.
rhinoceros-like animal came.
Disney, don't sue us.
Up there.
You don't need a thing. Damn it. Legit, these are from the original podcast that I did way back in the day, so they're really old. They're really old and need to be replaced. Okay, I think I'm in good shape.
I'll buy some stickers.
Yeah, buy some more stickers because we need more cables.
Maybe that's how you sell stickers.
we're
You
starving
say, buy
artists."
stickers because we need cable.
Hey, remember that episode in Monopoly where you could barely hear Samuel?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
we
could be
need new
this one.
cable, so check out our merch and buy a sticker. All right, so
People may not want to hear all of us. Maybe that's a selling point. Buy more stickers, and
we'll
we won't
unplug.
buy new cables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we will unplug whoever gets the most purchases.